Good morning and welcome to this version of the St. Louis County Board of Commissioners. Paul, are you ready for the roll?
Commissioner O'Neill.
Present.
Commissioner Dahlberg.
Here.
Commissioner Forsman.
Here.
Commissioner Sweeney.
Here.
Commissioner Nelson.
Here.
Commissioner Rocker.
Here.
And Chair Commissioner Fink.
Present. Thank you for coming. Typically this morning we would have a moment for one of the county elected officials to speak to us about their favorite spot in St. Louis County. The honor that today would have gone to our auditor, Don Dicklich, who is not available to make such a presentation. Please look at your schedules to make sure you know who is next on the list. With that, this is the time that citizens will be allowed to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. Please note on your agenda that the time limits are 5 minutes each. For items that are on the agenda, citizens will be allowed to address the board at the time a motion is on the floor. Do we have a sign-up list at this particular point, Administrator? Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I assume you are here to speak to us this morning. Again, the rules are 5 minutes. Please note that several members of the audience at this particular moment has been helpful in providing a code of conduct in which it suggests that the mood and tone of your of all of our conversations should be respectful in nature. Ms. St. George.
Good morning, Chairman Fink, Commissioners. My name is Rebecca St. George. With Tad and Emily Johnson, I co-authored the letter to the county that over 120 taxpayers signed last week. The letter was personally delivered to Mr. Eckenberg last week with the request that commissioners read the letter before this meeting. I trust that you read the letter, so I'm not going to revisit all the points that were made. Instead, I'd like to expand on specific requests we made and offer a few suggestions. We have asked that you retract your position of not selling land to the tribes. We've read statements saying the county's position has been no net loss of private lands for at least 10 years, but the facts are that the county has routinely sold land to the tribes over the past 10 years. Tribes are governments. They need to be dealt with on a government-to-government basis. One fundamental rule in observing the government-to-government relationship is consultation. Consultation is supposed to happen prior to any policy shifts. That's not what happened here. We don't believe you need to go through the board process to change your position. The instruction to stop selling land was provided informally, and so it can be retracted informally. We request that you do this today as a first step and as a good faith sign to Indian taxpayers that you value your relationship with us and with the tribes. The second step would be to request a meeting with the tribes. As one commissioner pointed out, there are 8,000 Indian people in this county. What was not pointed out is that the great majority of us pay property taxes and we vote. We now have one of the highest voter turnout records of any population in the nation. You could demonstrate that you value us as citizens and want to get to know us better by considering our second request. We've asked that you agree to consider inviting tribal experts to present an educational forum to the board about the Indian legal, economic, and historical issues. The Minnesota Indian Affairs Council, created in state statute, is the official liaison between the governor and the 11 tribes. The Indian Affairs Council provides a forum for legislators and advises the state on issues of concern to Indian communities. Currently, Chairman Kevin Lisi of Boys Ford is the president of that council. For the past few years, the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council has hosted workshop training at the Capitol for new state legislators called Indian Issues 101. Matters like sovereignty, taxation, lands into trust, gaming, and social services issues are presented. Legislators from around the state voluntarily participate in these workshops, including the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader. as taxpayers, we would like to work with the board to put together a similar forum for St. Louis County. You might even consider opening it to other counties as well. If you initiate a forum like this, it will be a tangible sign to Indian taxpayers of respect. We have national and local experts on these issues right here in this region. But if you're willing to do something like this, you need to partner with the tribes in the Indian community in putting it together. Thank you for considering my views. Board members may not have intended to offend anyone, but that's what happened. Now it's time to repair the damage. That will have to be initiated by you as a board. Miigwech.
Thank you. Mr. Defoe.
Chairman Fink, County Commissioners, good morning to you. My name is Ricky Defoe. I'm a Fond du Lac band member. I also sit as co-chair on Duluth's American Indian Commission. I'm also a member of the Iron Workers Local 512 Section B here in Duluth. I've been a resident of Duluth for about 35 years of my life. And I'm not here to criticize, but I'm here to inform and maybe offer some solutions if I could. In light of the developments here in Indian country, specifically with the land issue, the land within the reservation boundaries were never intended to be used as revenue, tax revenue, generated revenue. It was to be held in trust for forever for the benefit of the people, Fond du Lac people in particular. So the land then, you have to do what is right and to act as a good ally and to retract on your positions that you have of opposing land into trust applications and also tax forfeited land. Now you have some solutions to that. You have the specific federal regulations that say that the Secretary of the Interior has to consult with state and local governments prior to determining whether any lands are placed in trust and such. So, and if you appeal that decision, you have the right to appeal not only to the Interior Department but also to federal courts. So you have that solution in front of you. One of the issues was talked a lot about was the police force. Minnesota is a public 280 law state. It's a federal law enacted in 1953 that gave jurisdictions, state jurisdictions on criminal matters and some civil matters within the reservation boundaries. This created a huge maze, a nightmare of which, if you will, of in jurisdictional issues. And then this created what we have is a mutual aid agreement. And we have such commissioners that we need to understand this, that it's a difficult situation for all people involved because of that maze. We have that mutual aid agreement in place, like I say, but it's specifically is only for tribal members, Fond du Lac band members, where there is no cross-deputization of our law enforcement. So this is a federal issue that you have to take up with the federal courts. Federal law, Public Law 280, we're that state, California, Oregon, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Nebraska, the 5 original ones. But you also can reconsider, or you can consider retrocession of those policing back to the tribes, and that would be open for discussion at a later date with the tribal officials of those policing. But also, the issue, I think, is deeper within the American hegemony, if you will, and this is institutional racism. And nobody wanted to talk about this at the front steps, so that's why we come here in a good way to talk about this, because it's ingrained not only in the judicial system, but the policing system, education system, and all these things. the institutional racism reinforces, even though we have denial throughout the whole system here, but what it does, it reinforces the status quo. It reinforces white privilege. And in my opinion, these reinforcements of the status quo and white privilege and stuff, this institutional racism, weakens America. So we have to understand some of these things. And with that said, then, this institutional racism and structural oppression, we have, within St. Louis County, we have Undoing Racism, which is, Cheryl Bowman is in charge of that, and that's a good program, seminar and such to that we could attend. And also there is the Aztec acronym about a 12-week course of racism and things of this nature. So these are solutions that you can take, and I'm considering this also myself. So I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Defoe. Ladies and gentlemen, in order not to embarrass you or any other thing, when you get close to time, I'll tap my wrist and turn my microphone on if you notice that. If you do not, then I'll have to interrupt. I'd prefer not to interrupt. Mr. Ledoux?
Hi, my name's Tony Ledoux, and I've been a resident of Duluth for about 25 years. And I've been with the beginning of the Native American Commission when it first started up. People asked for people from the grassroots to come forward, and I did. At that time, I've been involved with a lot of what the faith community, St. Paul's Church, Peace Church, United Methodist, and I went to Indian Bible School, Mocom Indian Bible School in Cass Lake, Minnesota, on Leech Lake Reservation, and I was a lay reader there for quite some time. But the thing that they taught us there is about the economics of what happens with two different cultures, you know, the dominant culture and the Native American culture. And that was very, very informative to us, and then it caused me to take 2 years of business administration, which I prize it quite a bit. But Duluth is kind of a different kind of city. I see a lot of different things going on, and I see a lot of people that I know we have open doors to, and I don't think some of the stuff that was said was intentional to create division, and that's what it did, because that's people have this, they create this tunnel vision when certain statements are made. And what I'm always trying to do is look at the bigger picture of what's happening. And I do see the good people, and I see it in Gordon Ramsay, and I see it in Melanie Ford, and I know I see Steve O'Neill. I'm not, some of you I'm not even aware, but you know, I have this faith in Duluth, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But when I was in St. Paul's Church, there was this young lady, she was becoming a priest, and she said, if I put a Christian Episcopal sign on my car, it means I have to drive differently. You know? So I can understand that point. But my thing is that I do see that we can work things out, and ever since that we put this Native American Commission together, that they said if we can develop a relationship between the Native American people and the city of Duluth, I think we can go a long ways, you know. And I see that here. I do see it, you know, and we're trying to stay away from strong words. We're trying to draw people back together, if anything. And I see it in our young people, you know, and I just hope that things can be worked out. And I have that belief things can be, you know, there's no reason why it can't. And I hope you just kind of take this further and keep going forward with it, all right? Thank you.
I think we would agree, sir. Kathy Holzer? Is that Davy or Day?
My name is Kathy Heltzer, and I live in Duluth. And I come before you today to indicate my concern with respect to comments made at the January 20th County Board workshop regarding American Indian people and the role that they play in the life of our community here in St. Louis County. I come as a non-Indian person, for it's my belief that when one group is shown disrespect, we are all obligated to speak up. When comments are made by people on this board demonstrating disrespect toward African Americans, it should have been the response of all non-African American people to speak up. And when women have been disrespected, it should clearly be the responsibility of all men who seek justice to not keep their silence. Today, I'm asking that this board take steps to repair the damage with the American Indian community and also with tribal leadership. Those of us who are in positions of privilege, whether it be by our race, gender, or elected positions, we live in the world of good intentions. When we say things that hurt or disrespect other people, our first instinct is always to say, that wasn't our intent. Those who do not enjoy this privilege, whether it be as a person of color or as a person who does not hold a public office, or simply as one who does not have any personal, economic, or political power, they live in the world of consequences. They must deal every day with the consequences of our words and actions, no matter what our intent is. In closing, I ask that you not disregard those people who have spoken with you today, and instead you move forward, recognizing the consequences of your words and your deeds. As Paul Wellstone said, we all do better when we all do better. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure about the last name here. Is this Mr. Davies or Mr. Day?
Chairman Fink, members of the council, it's John Day.
Thank you, sir.
I'm a Duluth resident, and I've been a Duluth resident since 1984. I started work when I was about 14, like the rest of you, and now I'm 59, and I've been a taxpayer all those years. I want to highlight a couple of things today. First of all, it's very difficult for me to come up here after reading all the reports in the newspaper and seeing what is going on, because this is emotionally charged. And therefore, for me, it's very difficult for me to articulate what I really want to say to you in a manner that you can understand it. And so, I do want to tell you, though, that as one of the 8,000 to 8,500 American Indians in this part of the world, is that we have the highest percentage of low-income people. And because of that, you'll find in the American Indian community that we are probably more aware percentage-wise than the rest of the population on the financial crisis of this country, of this state, of this county. And on top of that, we know the financial situations that are in tribal lands, and we know the problems that exist and how one government shift impacts the other. And I think it's so important that if you want to be a good neighbor, that you should take this board and go to Fond du Lac and to Bois Fort and extend your hand and saying, we would like to come to your board meeting and talk about these financial issues that you have in front of us. That would be a very good board and very good neighbor policy for you to follow. There's tremendous other areas I'd like to talk about, but I would just leave it at that right now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That ends the pre-sign-up list. If others would like to speak, they may do so in succession. Please, when you come forward, there is a pen and a paper at the desk. Please sign in. And the lady in the back would be first, sir. No, please come up. You were up. Again, each of you have 5 minutes.
Does the signing count in my 5 minutes?
When you say hello, I'll start.
Thank you for the opportunity to come speak today. My name is Gretchen. I live in Proctor, and I come before you today not as an expert on law, but as a student of human nature. I come to talk not about the words of the past, but of the words of the future. As I thought of coming here today and speaking, I was very nervous, not because I doubt my heart, but because I get nervous speaking in front of people. But I weighed the thoughts of nervousness against the regret that I would feel if I did nothing, and that regret felt like a ball in a chain. Nevertheless, I stand here before you as a member of our community, as a fellow taxpayer, a voter, and as a person. And my request is simple. that I ask you to look at the group of people in this room and out in the rest of the world with your hearts and not just your eyes. Because our eyes can play tricks on us, and they tell us we see things differently than they really are. And our hearts, if they are open and full of compassion, are much more reliable and tougher to fool and deny. And you as commissioners that we have elected are in place to govern of the people and by the people and for the people. And so I ask you to look at us as the people. And it's a we and an us, and not an us and a them. And the group that stood together in front of the City Hall last week was part of that we and part of that us. And the group was a wonderful blend of young and old, of men and women, of people who came near and far, and most importantly, people of every color. People who stood together to say we support each other and we stand up for each other. And there were no pockets of people within the group, no cliques, no pushing or shoving, but lots of hugs and smiles, and it was a wonderful mix. And so I come again to ask you to look into your hearts, and if so, let that color your perception. And a friend of mine once told me, be careful of what you think, for your thoughts become your words, and be careful what you say, for your words become your actions, and be careful of your actions, for your actions become your character, and your character is everything. And she didn't make it up, but she passed it along. And my husband, who is a man of few words, would say that your words create your reality. And we live in some crazy times. We can see it on the road as people cut each other off. They find parking spots where there are none. They don't mind being rude in the grocery store or in the parking lots. But we also celebrate the diversity of our Northland with things like FinFest and lumberjack contests and Iron World. And they are all very important parts of Minnesota history. And we even live in a day where a person of color is the president of our country. But I wonder how many of you have taken the opportunity to attend a powwow and to see the gentle gathering of people who have come together to celebrate a rich and very spiritual heritage. And I wonder if any of you were at the Veterans Powwow last summer and listened to the names of the Ojibwe warrior men and the warrior women who fought for our country, regardless of the conflict. The number of names of those who have fought and passed on was staggering. And if you look at the Fond du Lac Reservation logo, you will see that it contains many symbols, including 4 colors, red, yellow, black, and white, to represent the 4 races of man. There is no exclusion there, only inclusion. And there is much to learn from each member of the group of us, and yourselves included. But that learning and sharing doesn't happen if we look only with our eyes. We must look with our hearts and with respect, fairness, and compassion, because it's the right thing to do. And I will end as I began, nervous, and by asking that you open your hearts, and thank you for the opportunity to speak and to address the group.
You certainly didn't sound nervous. Thank
You
you.
didn't feel my leg shake.
We won't look at that either. Sir?
Oh,
Please sign in, sir.
Oh, okay. Can I make my X now or later?
Whenever you feel comfortable.
I'll have my wife come up and sign, okay?
Sure,
Because I can't see your lines that good.
I understand. Just tell us your name.
My name is Al Kiddo.
Thank you.
I was glad to hear you say this morning to take the time out for the veterans. I am a veteran, 1950, the Korean War, Akichita. I was not a citizen of the United States. I was a ward of the government. 1955, we were made citizens of this great nation. You don't know what it's like to be a ward of the government. When I went into the service, they made me a Caucasian so I could serve. When I got out, they made me an Indian again. And then when I read in the paper some statements that were being made, I said, this can't be the 70s again. Institutional racism is raising its ugly head again. I thought we were more enlightened as to work together in tribal, city, state governments. But boy, the terms that I used to hear back in South Dakota, because I am a Dakota, Dima Dakota, when they said Indians and dogs keep off the grass. Those words that were used. And I thought, that can't be from our county commissioners. They're educated people. Oh, by the way, I'm educated too. I got 3 master's degrees. I brought myself up without any help from the government, except the GI Bill. And thank God for it, I had it because I got my education. But I was a little angry when I seen that, because I thought racism and its ugly head would not rise again because of the enlightenment of the people. And we used to sing the song, BIA, we're not your little Indians anymore. And someone made the remark, and I thought it was quite a slam against our tribal governments, that we couldn't do anything unless the BIA approved the sale of that land and took it into trust. My friends, I'm going to have my wife come up and sign, because I came through that racism when you couldn't get a job. If you remember the old forms, they used to say, what nationality are you? And if you put down Indian, you weren't hired. And I went hungry many a times because I was proud of my heritage. Tima Dakota, Akichita, Ho Mitakasi.
Thank you, Al. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Ms. Karen?
Good morning, Jan Karen. Like Kathy, I feel an obligation to speak this morning, but I don't think I can come near the eloquence and heartfelt words that you've heard preceding me. Nevertheless, I have an idea, and I'd like to share it with you. I'm requesting that the board consider, when you make major changes in policy regarding an issue affecting a group of citizens in our county, that those citizens be invited to participate in the decision-making process before it's made. You made a decision to stop selling reservation land back to the Bois Forte and Fond du Lac bands. It seems to me that those most affected by that decision were not invited to participate. Participation, in fact, is one of 9 basic, universal human needs. It's assumed that everyone needs to be able to participate. We can strengthen our community when we respect this need. In the future, I hope that you would consider this need for participation, asking yourselves, who are the major players in this decision? We know that, unfortunately, most citizens in St. Louis County are not reading the agenda of the board. We all know that. It's too bad. So you could assume that early notification by you of stakeholders, since they're not going to be looking at the agenda probably, about issues directly affecting them would accomplish 2 objectives. It would reduce conflict, and it would increase the opportunity for citizen participation. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Seeing none. I do have just a short comment here that, based on the comments that you've made. First, the board appreciates the insight and the advice. To the last speaker's comments particularly, no policy changes has been made. Essentially, what happened at that particular meeting was that we stopped doing what we've been doing until we can research what it is that we want to talk about. Then we must follow the procedures of the board in order to move forward. The request at that particular day was, do we start with a board consensus of some site to go ahead and do the research that was necessary, given the errors that had been discovered as we reviewed this 33-acre parcel and a 80-acre parcel that followed it almost immediately. While I appreciate everyone's comments, and I've read everything that was in the newspaper, and I have read other articles about land and land use and what is happening within the country and in our own county as it relates to no net loss of private property, I noted that many of your comments were somewhat premature. For example, at the beginning of this meeting, Ms. St. George said you should have, and the newspaper said exactly the same, that we should have contacted the reservation before we had a discussion. Unfortunately, not a single commissioner on this board has the unilateral ability to go contact on a project that would in fact someday affect policy change without having the consent of the rest of the county commissioners. When that is complete, we then can put the research together and make an invitation. But an invitation was included in the tapes that each of you had seen. At the very end, you might recall that the comments were, and make sure that you make an appointment to visit or invite the leadership to come to the county board and discuss this issue. But before we can do that, we need to make sure our house is in order. And I can tell you from the experience that I've gone through in looking at this, we are still making sure that our house is in order. And an invitation is being prepared at this particular moment for sometime next month. With that, thank you again very much for coming. I appreciate everything that you said. This board has, and I know from listening to each of the commissioners over the last 3 or 4 days that they have read what's been written. Commissioner Rocker, did I see your light on?
Yes, if you're going to permit us to make some comments and provide feedback.
I was hoping that we would probably prepare ourselves before we...
Well, I'm prepared.
Well, I guess then please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'd start by saying thank all of you for being here today to share with us your thoughts on this issue, this perception of this issue, more so than a reality of the issue, because I haven't had a chance to read everything. I was out of town in Detroit visiting a newborn in our family, and you can well imagine what's in the papers out there in Detroit. There's a lot of issues being faced by people everywhere. But I would just say that, there is no line in the sand, and if there is a line in the sand, I think it's a very blurred line that maybe is based more on perception than reality. And this board, at least during my tenure here of 20 years, has exhibited a very positive record of voting, as have I, in support of working with people of all races and religions and colors with no discrimination. And I think the voting record reflects that. And St. Louis County Board has a long record of working in cooperation with the Native American community on issues from solid waste management to law enforcement to human services to education to working with youth to any number of things that we could point to if we wanted to go back into the records and pull those things forward. And a number of comments were made by folks about this has become a media-charged issue. And I think nothing could be more true, because it has, I think, much of the perception versus reality that has emerged here and has been exhibited in the comments is perhaps could be said to be an overreaction, but it never is when it affects yourself. It's never an overreaction, but I think a lot of it could be attributed to some false media reporting that has put more emphasis on perception than reality, because sometimes if you have to integrate reality into your stories, that requires some research, and you have to find positives to balance out your stories. And we can't always expect that from media, but we have to remember that there needs to be balance in our own perspectives and our own perceptions. And I'm a Euro-American, a third generation, and I have a rich history in this area. My grandfather and my ancestry came here looking for opportunity. When they first got here, they didn't find a lot of opportunity. They lived in mining camps, in mining-owned property and mining-owned homes, and were paid in mining script, which was very oppressive to them. And until they became organized and clawed their way out of that position, they were able to acquire properties to own and to pay taxes on, and to be more a part of the community. And that has taken place over a 100-year period up on the Iron Range. So, again, I think, as I reflected back, knowing we were going to have this discussion today on that board workshop, which was in true context an opportunity to have open, free-flowing dialogue about issues, not to address policy other than from a discussion vantage, to not make binding votes of any kind, and none were made, to my understanding, but yet there's a perception that a binding vote of some kind was made. And I thought I was, in my position, saying, yes, we have a fiduciary responsibility to all taxpayers in St. Louis County to better understand land management practices of the Native American-owned lands, or the mining company lands, or the forest industry lands, and all kinds of lands from a tax vantage. And I thought we were making a decision to say, yes, we know in St. Louis County we have 60+% of our tax base is non-taxable in all forms, and we have a responsibility to try to focus on tax base as it affects our capacity to deliver services across the board in many respects. So I thought we were making a decision to say we need to sit down with tribal leadership to better understand their management vision, their vision of how they plan on managing the lands they have within the reservation, whether it's closed or open reservations, and how it works and is integrated into how we manage the county government and how we manage the delivery of services. And that's really with the vote, I thought, and discussion that we had. And somehow it has become an inflammatory topic of discussion that has led many people in many different directions. And I guess we need to apologize for that, because I hope nothing I said or this board said led us down that path, but yet that perception has emerged and seems to have really clouded the issue of talking about tax policy and land management issues from county's perspective and from the reservation perspective. So we do need to have more dialogue. We need to get on with having that dialogue to make sure we have a better understanding, so that realities are what we focus on and less on perception. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for letting me comment.
Thank you. With that, seeing no other hands, let's move forward on the agenda. Again, thank you for coming. The consent agenda would be before you.
So moved.
It's been moved and supported. Administrator Mitchell, I understand you have a comment. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be just a second. It will take us about 30 seconds to complete what we need to do here, and then we will break. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, I would ask that you hold number 9 off the consent agenda and discuss it at the board meeting. I would be asking you to table it there. A very minor issue, but one that we need to resolve. We have it listed as the Mountain Iron Economic Development Authority. And questions come up as to the jurisdictional line between the Mountain Iron Economic Development Authority and the East Joint Range Economic Development Authority. We need to make sure what area this property is actually situated in. So if you would remove that, I would then later on ask you to table it. Thank you.
Okay, number 9 has been pulled down. Are there any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I believe that has to be done by a commissioner, and I would amend my motion to pull down number 9. I apologize for missing that.
Yes, you're right. That is true. No, you don't need a second on the pull down. We just need to have a commissioner request. Commissioner has requested. The consent agenda has been moved and supported, with number 9 being pulled from it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. That would take us to the main agenda, which would be item number 9, and this would fall under Environment and Natural Resources. Commissioner Forsman?
Mr. Chair, I would table number 9 for 1 week. It has been, excuse me.
Thank you, Commissioner Forsman. It's been moved and supported to table based on the advice of the administrator. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. That would conclude our agenda for the day. Is there any boards, reports of boards and committees? Commissioner Sweeney?
Yes, and a number of us went to the Duluth Days in St. Paul. I think we had some very good conversations, and I think we opened those conversations with our legislators down there, at least in the group that I was with, in talking about thanking them for what they've done in the past and for the hard job that they have to do, and more looking at what could be done with economic stimulus kinds of things, not really asking for any other kinds of monies, knowing that, and to try and keep us as unaffected, shall we say, by the unallotments as they possibly can, or by the cutting back. So I think in that vein and in that mood, I think we did a really good job down there, had an opportunity to have good dialogue with our legislators, and not just ours, but some of the leadership of the House and Senate. The second thing is that yesterday I went and had just a brief meeting for about an hour with Al Franken, the mayor of Duluth, and the mayor of Two Harbors, talking about the effects of the economic stimulus package, some of the projects that St. Louis County had in that, of what the effect of the unallotments had been on the county at the state level. He was very interested in knowing what kinds of programs were going to be cut, what we were looking at. I told him that up to this point, we haven't really cut any program as such. We have either transferred responsibility to a private nonprofit, as was done with the senior centers and the meals and some of those things, and arrangements were worked out there so that the pretty seamless, it still is in effect, and they will still have those kinds of programs. And that the other thing that we have been doing is very conscientiously looking at our labor force, and as people retire, evaluating whether or not the work that they were doing could only be done by another body, or whether or not that work could actually be combined with someone else's work, or split up among a number of employees to avoid having to hire another person. And through attrition, we have eliminated a lot of employees in St. Louis County. And you know, actually, when I was there, I didn't have the actual number, but I know that when I started 12 years ago, we were somewhere close to 2,600 people who were employed in St. Louis County, and I know we're well under 2,000 at this point. I can't remember exactly what that number was. So I think it was a good meeting. I think he is trying to get prepared to go out there and be our U.S. Senator. I'm not going to have any comment on that. I appreciate the fact that he's boning up and getting ready in case he prevails. So I just thought I would like to let you know about that. And the third thing is, and this isn't really under, no, I'm not going to do it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Sweeney. With that in mind, I would like to remind everybody that the House and Senate will be in Duluth on the 20th of this month, which is Friday at 9:30, to take testimony from anyone who is interested in discussing it as it relates directly to the budget. I understand that I'm hoping that some of us will, in fact, be there and make testimony. I will be in the Twin Cities for a Board of Directors meeting for the Association of Minnesota Counties. However, at the Committee of the Whole, I would like anybody who's planning to testify to give us a brief synopsis of what you're thinking about testifying on, so that we don't step on each other if there's more than one. Thank you. Commissioner Nelson, and please be aware that we have a time specific coming up, and I'd like to have a break in there.
That mere suggestion would suggest that sometimes I'm a bit long-winded, okay?
I did not say that.
And that may be the case, Mr. Chair. Thank you. To my friends in the Anishinaabe or Lakota Nation, Miigwech. I do appreciate the comments made here today. I apologize for the misinformation that has been circulating. With that, Mr. Chair, I spent a great deal of the time Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday down at the legislature trying to, as Chair of Finance and Budget for St. Louis County, trying to get a handle on what we potentially could be seeing as impacts. And I believe that there is some consensus coming from those individuals within the legislature and within the governor's office that are these are at least projections. And I want to start this off by saying to this board, we don't have time to get sidetracked, because we are going to be looking at cuts somewhere in the neighborhood of just south of $5 million. That's on top of what we saw this past year.
Commissioner,
And-
are you talking about $5 million based on a $4.8 million or billion dollar budget?
I'm talking about $5 million based on the projection, which is now more around $6 billion. And again, these are projections coming from leadership in both the House and Senate. And again, this was my focus, was to find out what that number was, or something close to where that number was or is eventually going to be. And again, there is consensus on that figure. And I would just make this statement now at this board that we have much to do, and we have a very, very difficult year ahead of us, and we need to maintain focus on that, because those cuts are going to impact the service delivery system here in St. Louis County dramatically. So with that, I just wanted to put that number out there. I know that it's not cast in stone, but we certainly know that as the governor's budget and as the February forecast becomes available, all of these numbers are going to start gelling. And at this point, it might not be gelling yet, but it's certainly, there seems to be a consensus that number is the number that St. Louis County will be directly impacted. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ford.
Thank you, Commissioner Fink. At the last board meeting, I was asked to render a legal opinion about whether or not the county board could issue rules or regulations regarding videotaping of meetings or electronic device, possession of electronic devices. I have received more telephone calls, I think, on this issue than probably any other issue that I have that you've asked me to research, and because it was published, I think, down in the Twin Cities, I've received a lot of unsolicited legal advice as well. I do have an opinion. I have been asked by the Duluth News Tribune to share that opinion when I have it ready. But to summarize...
Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Does this include, did you have an opportunity to see my letter to the ACLU yesterday?
Yes, I also got a copy of that letter.
And does that include the comments that I made in there? Does your opinion relate to that particular response?
Yes.
Thank you.
I didn't specifically address that issue, but I mean that letter. But in my research, first of all, the law is not settled in Minnesota. It's not an issue that has ever been handled in the courts in Minnesota. Nationwide, it has been addressed, and the courts are not clear on the issue as well. It raises constitutional issues. It raises issues of the open meeting law, and especially the electronic device restriction would raise issues of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The county board may enact reasonable and neutral policies or regulations to limit videotaping of meetings or to ban electronic devices. But any policy needs to be very narrowly construed to avoid limitations of public access to governmental discussions. And any such policy would be my recommendation that it be reviewed by me before enactment. It is my legal advice to the county board not to go there, just because it will, I have a feeling, generate a lawsuit, and it will give the state the opportunity to make law on the issue. And I don't know that that there's a real compelling reason at this point to enact restrictions. And absent real compelling reasons to do that, I don't think it's a wise use of county, of your authority.
So the last portion of your comments were opinions.
It was my legal advice to the board, yes, to not
I'm
issue
sorry.
restrictions.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Rocker.
Just a question, I guess, of the attorney. Will we be getting this information through the normal channels of communications?
Yes,
in
I,
board memo or board letter form or something?
Yes, I have
to that
a
effect?
copy
'Cause
to
I have
give
not
to.
seen anything.
Yes, I have a copy to give to the administrator today, and he can disseminate that to all of the board. I also have a copy for Mr. Myers, who's not here, I don't think. But
Actually, I was wondering if we could hold that copy until after the county board has all had an opportunity to read what you said and comment back to you.
yes, I did receive the request, the data practices request 2 weeks ago, and I am allowed under the law to give to respond in a reasonable amount of time. Since I just finished up my opinion yesterday, it depends on how much time you want to review it. I don't see any reason to declare it to be attorney-client privileged. It's a legal memo. It's not talking about any particular case. So how long will it take me, how long do you think I need to wait to issue the opinion to the press? I basically have given it right now, but
I was kind of hoping that it might be at least 24 hours so we could get comments back just in case we see something that you might have, that you might not have included in your document.
sure.
Thank you. Commissioner Nelson, your issue.
Mr. Chair, I don't really have a problem with it being released to the paper because, quite frankly, that's pretty much how business has been conducted with this attorney for the past 2 years. It gets disseminated to the paper and then it comes back to us.
Commissioner Nelson.
I'd move adjournment.
That would sound appropriate. It's been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience.